For much of the past decade, one of Europe's greatest political challenges has not been economic stagnation, security threats, or even Brexit, but rather the difficulty of presenting a unified front in the face of an unpredictable ally, the United States under Donald Trump. Trump's return to the center of American political life, whether through direct leadership or dominant influence, has once again forced European leaders to confront an uncomfortable reality. While Europe depends heavily on transatlantic cooperation, it must also learn how to say no collectively when U.S. demands clash with European interests. Increasingly, Europe's leaders are discovering that unity, once elusive, is not only possible but necessary. Trump's approach to foreign policy has long unsettled European capitals. His skepticism toward NATO, preference for bilateral deals over multilateral frameworks, and blunt transactional diplomacy contrast sharply with Europe's consensus-driven political culture. During his presidency, Trump frequently criticized European defense spending, imposed tariffs on European goods, withdrew from international agreements like the Paris Climate Accord, and openly questioned the value of long-standing alliances. These moves exposed Europe's vulnerability. Fragmented decision-making left individual countries struggling to respond effectively, often fearing retaliation if they acted alone. Initially, European reactions to Trump were cautious and divided. Eastern European states, particularly those bordering Russia, were reluctant to antagonize Washington, seeing U.S. military support as indispensable. Southern European countries worried about trade disruptions and economic consequences, while larger powers like Germany and France hesitated between accommodation and resistance. This lack of cohesion allowed Trump to exploit differences, applying pressure country by country and reinforcing his belief that Europe was incapable of unified action. However, experience proved to be a powerful teacher. Over time, European leaders recognized that silence or appeasement only encouraged further unilateral demands. Gradually, a shift began to take shape, one rooted in coordination, strategic patience, and a growing confidence in Europe's collective leverage. Rather than confronting Trump directly in public, European officials increasingly worked behind the scenes to align positions before engaging Washington. The goal was not confrontation for its own sake, but clarity. When Europe says yes, it must mean something, and when it says no, it must do so together. A key factor in this transformation has been the strengthening of EU institutional coordination. The European Commission, once seen primarily as a bureaucratic body, has assumed a more assertive geopolitical role. Trade policy, one of the EU's strongest tools, became a central pillar of Europe's response to Trump-style pressure. When threatened with tariffs or trade restrictions, the EU learned to respond not with fragmented national concessions, but with unified countermeasures backed by the weight of the world's largest single market. This collective approach sent a clear message: Europe negotiates as one. Germany and France, long described as the engine of European integration, played a crucial role in shaping this consensus. Berlin, traditionally cautious in foreign policy, began to acknowledge that economic interdependence alone could not guarantee political stability. Paris, under President Emmanuel Macron, openly argued for strategic autonomy, calling for Europe to reduce over-reliance on the United States in defense, technology, and energy. While the phrase initially sparked controversy, it gradually gained acceptance as a practical necessity rather than an ideological ambition. Defense and security have been particularly sensitive areas. Trump's repeated threats to weaken NATO if allies failed to meet defense spending targets forced Europe to confront uncomfortable truths. While many countries did increase military budgets, they also sought to strengthen European defense cooperation through initiatives such as Permanent Structured Cooperation (PESCO) and joint procurement programs. The underlying message was subtle but firm: Europe values NATO, but it will not allow its security to be held hostage to political rhetoric from Washington. Energy policy offered another test of European unity. Trump's opposition to projects like Nord Stream 2 highlighted internal European divisions, especially between Western and Eastern member states. Yet Russia's invasion of Ukraine dramatically reshaped the debate, pushing Europe toward a more unified energy strategy that reduced dependence on both Russian supplies and unpredictable external pressure. By coordinating sanctions, diversifying energy sources, and investing in renewables, Europe demonstrated an ability to act collectively even under intense geopolitical strain. Diplomatically, Europe refined its communication strategy. Rather than responding emotionally to provocative statements from Trump, European leaders adopted a disciplined approach, emphasizing shared values while clearly outlining red lines. Joint statements, coordinated press conferences, and aligned diplomatic messaging reduced opportunities for division. This method did not eliminate disagreements with Washington, but it ensured they were addressed through structured dialogue rather than public confrontation. Perhaps the most significant shift has been psychological. For years, Europe struggled with self-doubt, questioning whether it possessed the political will to act independently. Trump's confrontational style, paradoxically, accelerated Europe's maturation as a geopolitical actor. Faced with the prospect of an unreliable partner, European leaders began to recognize their collective strength. The EU's economic power, regulatory influence, and diplomatic reach provide leverage that few individual states could wield alone. Critics argue that Europe's unity remains fragile and situational. Internal disagreements persist over relations with China, defense spending priorities, and the balance between national sovereignty and collective action. Moreover, not all European leaders share the same assessment of Trump or the United States. Some continue to favor close alignment with Washington regardless of leadership changes, while others advocate greater distance. Yet even these disagreements increasingly play out within a shared framework rather than devolving into open fragmentation. Importantly, Europe's ability to say no does not signal hostility toward the United States. On the contrary, European leaders consistently emphasize that a strong, united Europe is a better partner for Washington. By presenting clear, collective positions, Europe reduces misunderstandings and encourages more balanced negotiations. In this sense, unity is not an act of defiance but a foundation for a healthier transatlantic relationship. The broader global context reinforces this logic. Rising competition with China, instability in the Middle East, and ongoing security challenges in Eastern Europe demand coordinated responses. Europe understands that dependence without agency is a strategic liability. Trump's influence has served as a catalyst, accelerating debates that might otherwise have unfolded over decades. Looking ahead, Europe's challenge will be to sustain this unity beyond moments of crisis. Speaking with one voice requires constant effort, compromise, and trust among member states. It also demands political leadership willing to explain to domestic audiences why collective decisions, even unpopular ones, serve long-term national interests. Trump may have been the catalyst, but Europe's response reflects a deeper evolution in how the continent views its role in the world. In the end, learning how to say no has taught Europe how to say yes more meaningfully, to cooperation grounded in mutual respect rather than pressure. Whether Trump remains a dominant force in U.S. politics or not, the lesson will endure. Europe has discovered that unity is not merely a diplomatic ideal but a strategic necessity. And in finding its collective voice, Europe has taken a decisive step toward shaping its own future on the global stage.